I think one of the most interesting things that can happen is when art changes over time. Now, it's not physically changing, I think. We're changing around it. But it's this idea that works of art, whatever it is, can reveal themselves to us slowly over time. Something that's not clear to us before becomes clear to us after a certain point. I used to work in an art museum, and in all my years there were many paintings that I would see on a daily basis that I felt differently about by the time I left than when I first arrived. And the same thing applies to movies. There have been many movies that I've seen many times that upon further viewing I feel better or worse about. And not just the movies themselves, but the kinds of movies. I don't know how I would have felt about the movie Nest by director Hilmir Paul-Mason, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, when I was younger. But watching it in the last few months, it's amazing. It's a story about this treehouse, essentially, seemingly in Iceland, one of the cold regions, and the camera never moves. It's just the world changing around it. So, to me, thinking about art changing in my time at the museum, this treehouse is like a work of art, and it is changing. It's moving. It's breathing. It's organic. It's a living being. We're not the only things moving around it, but changing around it. But it has this same feel of being an artwork that's kind of stationary, like a tree. It took us a long time, I think, to understand trees, and only, at least for maybe someone like me, to learn that trees actually communicate with each other and they share resources. That's not something we always thought, but here are these things that have been alive for hundreds or thousands of years sometimes even, and they've just kind of seen it all. That's what this movie reminds me of. It seems to be some sort of a story that has so many layers that are it's sort of complexity masquerading as simplicity in a way, because you have the story of things changing over time and some things being stationary or seemingly stationary, unchanged, and then the whole world sort of revolving around it in the seasons. This movie I found it was almost emotional at how simple it was, but yet how much it was actually saying to me, how much I was connecting with. One of the things I connected with right away was sort of the weather. Having grown up in Michigan, kind of a cold climate. It's not kind of, it is a cold climate. And then seeing another climate similar, there's this feeling of isolation. There's this tree house in the middle of this harsh landscape. Kind of felt like a metaphor for human beings, particularly ones who grow up in cold climates. There's something about cold climates that really makes you feel the earth. It really makes you feel like what you think you understand about nature, you don't. You're not in control of things. That this planet is going to do what it does, and you're just along for the ride. Some of that is baked into this movie, and watching this 20-plus minute film where the camera angle never changes. There's something so beautiful about the idea that I'm not going to give you any cuts in terms of like different scenes. I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to move around because I don't need to. It's all right there. Everything is right there. The changing seasons, the artwork, the simplicity of it, the complexity behind it. I think it's a brilliant film. You can see it on Mubi. I'm not sure if you can see it anywhere else. It's really hard to even find a trailer for it. There's something so beautiful about it, watching children, the imagination and the idea that you're growing up and you're building this thing, you're becoming an adult, you're becoming an earthling, and to sort of watch humanity in action here, like from the very beginning of nothingness to rustic living, and the simplicity of that, and the minimalist quality of that, this thing on a pole, and how that speaks volumes about where we are now with skyscrapers and highways and airports and trains. Are there great things about those? Sure. Yeah, there's lots of great things that come from that and seeing the world. But one of the great things about this film is it kind of made me think about the things in my own backyard, and am I appreciating them? Am I appreciating every tree, every bush, every flower, everything that I can't control, right down to the weeds and the birds and the squirrels? Are there repeat animals that come back? Is there a squirrel family that's been living in a tree in my backyard for generation after generation? How far back does it go? What about birds? What do they know? If you could talk to any of these things and ask them how they felt about things, how they felt about the changes. Did they approve of the way you cut the lawn? Do they like your barbecues? Do they care for the smell of you? All of these things, I think, are baked into this movie, and they might take a while to reveal themselves, just like the artwork I talked about at the beginning. But for me, multiple viewings and thinking about it for a few weeks, for a few months, a lot of them slowly start to surface, and different kinds of feelings and opinions about this movie emerge. It's a great movie. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for listening. Please support the Patreon, patreon.com/arthouseradio. Like and subscribe if you can. I'll see you next time.